All right, get ready because today we're diving deep into the science of habits.
Ooh, habit.
You know, like those little routines that secretly control our lives.
Yeah.
You sent in some seriously cool stuff
Oh,
from the book The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg.
I love that book.
And let me tell you, my mind is already blown.
Yeah.
Did you know almost half of what we do every day is driven by habits?
Wow, that's crazy.
It's wild, right?
It is pretty amazing.
It is.
When you think about it,
Yeah,
our brains are just incredible at finding shortcuts.
right.
And habits are like the ultimate efficiency hack.
Totally. Like our brains are lazy.
Well,
They want to conserve energy.
yeah, they want to be efficient.
Yeah.
Think about it like this.
Okay.
Back in the caveman days, our ancestors couldn't waste precious brain power relearning how to hunt or build a fire every single day.
Right.
Habits freed them up to focus on the really important stuff.
Like survival.
Exactly, survival.
So is that why I like instinctively reach for my phone first thing in the morning?
Maybe.
It's like my caveman brain is still wired for survival,
Uh-huh, yeah.
even if the only threat is missing out on like the latest social media update.
The modern day saber-toothed tiger.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But here's what really blows my mind.
What's that?
The book talks about how habits are so deeply ingrained,
Hmm.
they can even persist after serious brain damage.
Oh, wow.
There's this story about a man named Eugene
Eugene.
who had severe memory loss,
Oh, no.
but he could still navigate to the kitchen for a snack.
That's incredible.
I know, right?
So how is that possible?
Well, it's all thanks to the basal ganglia.
Okay.
It's a part of the brain that's less affected by injury,
Interesting.
and it's where habits are stored.
Ah, I see.
Like, think about a habit you have,
Mm-hmm.
even a simple one, like brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
You don't consciously think about every step.
You just do it.
Right. It's your basal ganglia kicking in,
Oh, wow.
running the routine on autopilot.
That's fascinating.
It's both incredible and a little unnerving, right?
It is a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
If you think about it too much.
Yeah, like we're not totally in control.
Yeah.
It means even if you break a habit,
Mm-hmm.
the neural pathway is still there,
Oh.
making it easier to fall back into the old routine.
Like riding a bike.
Exactly.
You never really forget.
So our brains are basically wired for both efficiency and temptation.
It's a double-edged sword.
It's like a constant battle between our conscious goals and those deeply ingrained habits.
I feel that.
But okay, let's break down exactly how these habits form.
All right, let's do it.
The book keeps mentioning this habit loop,
Yes. The habit loop.
something about cues, routines, and rewards.
The three musketeers of habit formation.
Okay, can you walk us through it?
Absolutely.
Like, what does it actually look like?
Imagine your morning coffee routine.
Oh, my favorite.
Right. Your alarm goes off.
This is a terrible sound.
It's your cue
Okay.
to start the habit.
Got-
You stumble into the kitchen and go through the motions of grinding the beans,
Yeah.
brewing the coffee,
Mm-hmm.
maybe even adding a little cinnamon.
Ooh, fancy.
That's your routine.
Okay, so far so good.
And
Then comes the glorious reward. That first sip of coffee, the warm feeling in your hands, the delicious aroma filling the kitchen.
it's like a little shot of happiness.
Could kickstart the day.
Exactly.
Okay, I get the cue, routine, reward thing,
Mm-hmm.
but where does the craving fit in?
Ah, yes, craving.
Is it like a bonus step?
Craving is the secret sauce that cements the habit loop.
Ooh, okay.
It's the anticipation of that reward
Mm-hmm.
that makes us want to repeat the behavior.
Like you start thinking about that first sip of coffee,
Exactly.
even before you've even gotten out of bed.
And that makes you get up and do the whole routine.
Interesting.
There was this fascinating study
Abby more.
where monkeys learned to perform a task to get a drop of blackberry juice.
Blackberry juice.
Delicious.
I'm already craving that. So basically, the monkeys learn to associate the task with the reward.
Exactly.
Clever monkeys.
And as they made that connection, something interesting happened in their brains.
Okay.
They started showing signs of anticipation before they even got the juice.
Really?
Their brains were firing up in anticipation of that reward.
Wow.
That's craving in action.
So even if we're trying to break a bad habit,
Yeah.
our brains are already wired to crave that reward.
It's tough to fight against.
No wonder it's so hard to resist.
It's a real challenge.
It is.
And here's the thing.
Okay.
It's not just about avoiding bad things.
Right.
Cravings can be positive too.
Oh, interesting.
Think about exercise.
Okay.
People who work out regularly often start to crave that endorphin rush
Oh, yeah, the runner's high.
or the feeling of accomplishment they get afterwards.
Positive feeling.
The power of habit even points to a study from New Mexico State University
Okay.
that showed how exercise can trigger the same kind of craving response in the brain
Really?
as addictive substances.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is.
That explains why I actually look forward to my morning runs now.
There you go.
But it's a little unsettling to think about how companies can tap into this craving mechanism, right?
It is a bit concerning.
Just like, are we being manipulated?
Absolutely. It makes you think. The book uses the example of Pepsodent toothpaste.
Pepsodent, okay.
Back in the day, they added ingredients to create that tingling sensation
Oh, yeah, I know that feeling.
because it gave people a tangible reward to crave,
Interesting.
a clean, fresh feeling.
Right.
It made them more likely to keep brushing.
Clever.
And Pepsodent became a household name.
Wow.
It's pretty brilliant marketing.
It is. It's sneaky but brilliant.
But it does make you think about how our habits are being shaped by forces we're not even aware of.
It's a little bit scary, isn't it?
Can be.
Like we're on autopilot and someone else is holding the remote control.
In a way, yeah.
So if these habit loops are so deeply ingrained, how do we actually break free and change them?
That's the million-dollar question.
Is it even possible?
It absolutely is possible.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's hope.
There's always hope.
Okay, good.
The Power of Habit actually dedicates a whole section to this.
Oh, cool.
The key is to understand that fighting the craving head-on is usually a recipe for disaster.
You mean like white-knuckling it?
Yeah, exactly.
That never works.
It's like trying to hold back a tidal wave.
It just makes it worse.
Exactly.
So what do we do instead?
Instead of trying to suppress the craving, the trick is to redirect it.
Redirect it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You keep the cue and the reward,
Okay.
but you swap out the routine.
Wait, so you're telling me I don't have to give up my morning coffee ritual?
You don't have to give up the coffee.
There's hope for me yet.
Haha, there you go. But how does that actually work?
The book is a really interesting example of smokers who successfully quit by doing push-ups every time they craved a cigarette.
Push-ups.
Yeah.
Instead of smoking.
They still got that physical sensation, that release of energy,
Okay.
but it was tied to a healthy behavior instead.
That's actually brilliant. They're basically hijacking the habit loop for good.
Exactly.
It's like, hey, brain, I know you want a reward, but how about this instead?
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks.
And this strategy isn't limited to individual habits either.
Really?
Alcoholics Anonymous uses a similar approach,
Oh, interesting.
replacing the routine of drinking with meetings and support groups.
So they're still getting that social connection,
Exactly.
that sense of belonging,
Mhm.
without the negative consequences?
They're finding healthier ways to satisfy those underlying cravings.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's not just about willpower. It's about understanding the deeper needs driving the habit.
Okay, so willpower isn't everything.
It's important, but it's not the whole story.
Right.
The book also talks about the importance of belief when it comes to making lasting changes.
Belief.
Yeah, like having faith in yourself
Okay.
that you can actually change.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Researchers studying AA members found that those who relapsed often did so after stressful events, even if they had new routines in place.
Oh, that's interesting.
What they lacked was a strong belief system to fall back on.
Like a safety net.
Yeah, exactly.
So if things get tough, you need something to hold on to.
The power of habit suggests that belief, whether it's in a higher power, a support group, or even just your own ability to change,
Right.
can provide that extra resilience you need to stick with new habits when things get tough.
It's like belief becomes this anchor that helps you weather the storms.
I like that analogy.
It makes sense because if you don't truly believe in the change, it's going to be so much harder to resist those old temptations, especially when life throws you curveballs.
It's about building a solid foundation for that new habit to take root.
A solid foundation. I like that.
And, speaking of building foundations,
Yeah.
willpower is often considered a keystone habit.
Oh, yeah, those habits that have a ripple effect, sparking positive changes in other areas of life.
Exactly.
The book had this incredible story about the CEO of Alcoa.
Paul O'Neill.
Yes, Paul O'Neill, who completely transformed the company's culture by focusing on, wait for it, worker safety.
That's right.
Worker safety.
Everyone thought he was crazy at first.
Really?
They were expecting him to come in and talk about profits and shareholder value.
That's what CEOs usually talk about.
But instead, he made worker safety his top priority.
Wow.
He understood that by focusing on this one keystone habit,
Okay.
he could create a cascade of positive changes.
So it wasn't just about safety.
It was about creating a culture of care and responsibility.
And it worked. By prioritizing safety, O'Neill forced changes in communication, efficiency, and ultimately, Alcoa became massively successful. It's amazing how such a seemingly simple shift can have such a profound impact.
It's a powerful example of how keystone habits can transform organizations.
But how does this apply to, us regular folks who aren't running Fortune 500 companies?
Think about it this way. What are some keystone habits that could have a ripple effect in your own life?
That's a good question.
Maybe it's something like exercising regularly,
Yeah.
meditating, or even just committing to making your bed every morning.
I like that one.
It's about starting small.
Small steps, big changes.
The power of habit emphasizes that these small wins build momentum and bolster your belief that bigger changes are possible.
So it's like a positive feedback loop.
Exactly.
Those small victories fuel your motivation to keep going.
And it strengthens your willpower muscle.
Oh yeah, willpower.
The book mentions this fascinating experiment with kids and marshmallows.
The Stanford marshmallow experiment, right?
Yes. They found that the kids who could resist eating one marshmallow right away in exchange for getting two later on
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
ended up being more successful in life.
Really? Just from delaying gratification.
It's a classic study that highlights how willpower is like a muscle. The
Okay.
more you use it, the stronger it gets.
So how do we pump up our willpower muscles? Give us the insider tips.
Well, one key is to avoid decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue.
Every decision you make, even something as small as choosing what to wear or what to eat,
Yeah.
depletes your willpower reserves.
So all those little choices add up.
They do.
Wow.
So streamlining your day can make a huge difference.
So like planning ahead.
Exactly.
Well,
Lay out your clothes the night before, meal prep on Sundays. Anything you can do to automate those routine decisions will free up mental energy for the stuff that really matters.
Oh my gosh, that explains so much. No wonder I feel drained by the end of the day after making a million little choices.
It's easy to get overwhelmed.
I'm all about simplifying my life now. So what else can we do to boost our willpower?
Setting realistic goals is crucial.
Okay, small steps.
The power of habit cautions against trying to change too much at once.
Right. Don't try to do everything at once.
Start with small, achievable goals and gradually build from there. Remember, every little victory strengthens your willpower muscle.
I like that.
And here's a really interesting point.
Okay.
Feeling in control of your choices actually boosts your willpower.
So if I feel forced into something, my willpower is going to drain faster.
Exactly.
That makes total sense.
It's about autonomy?
Having a sense of control.
Yes.
But what about habits on a larger scale, like in organizations? The book had this chilling story about a fire at King's Cross Station in London.
A tragic example of how rigid organizational habits can have devastating consequences.
It was a really sad story.
The fire investigation revealed that departmental silos and a lack of clear responsibility for passenger safety contributed to the disaster.
So it wasn't just one thing that went wrong.
It was a combination of factors.
A system failure.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how even well-intentioned habits can become dangerous if they're not adapted to changing circumstances.
That's a really important point.
So in a way, crises can actually be opportunities for change.
Absolutely. Crises often create a sense of urgency that can shatter old, ineffective habits and pave the way for necessary reforms.
So it's like a forced reset button.
In a way, yeah.
It's like they're using the disruptive power of the crisis to break free from the inertia of those old habits.
Exactly.
But before we get too deep into the world of organizational change, let's talk about something a little closer to home shopping. How do companies use our habits to influence our buying decisions?
You'd be surprised by how much thought goes into it.
I bet.
Ever noticed how supermarkets always place fruits and vegetables right at the entrance?
Now that you mention it, yes. I always thought it was just to make the place look inviting and fresh.
That's part of it.
But there's more to it than that.
It's a clever tactic.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
By starting your shopping trip with healthy choices, you're more likely to feel good about splurging on less healthy items later on.
Oh, sneaky.
It's all about setting the stage for those impulse buys.
Mind games. I've fallen for that so many times.
We all have.
But it's not just about strategic produce placement, right? I bet there's a whole arsenal of psychological tricks up their sleeves.
Oh, there's a whole world of data-driven marketing going on behind the scenes.
I knew it.
Remember Target's infamous pregnancy prediction algorithm?
Wait, they could actually predict who was pregnant based on shopping habits?
Yep,
That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
it kind of is.
How is that even possible?
It was a pretty big deal at the time. Target analyzed customer purchase data and identified certain patterns that strongly correlated with pregnancy.
Like what kind of things were they tracking?
Things like buying unscented lotion, prenatal vitamins,
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
even large quantities of cotton balls.
Cotton balls, really?
Apparently, pregnant women buy a lot of cotton balls.
Huh. You learn something new every day.
They could then use this information to send targeted ads and coupons to women who were likely pregnant,
So they were marketing baby products to women before they even knew they were pregnant.
even before they had announced it to their families, yeah.
That's both incredibly impressive and a little bit creepy.
Yeah, it definitely raised some eyebrows.
Like, how much do these companies really know about us?
That's the question, isn't it?
Did Target get into trouble for this?
They did. Some people felt like their privacy was being invaded, and it raised a lot of ethical questions about data collection and targeted marketing.
Yeah, I can see how that would be upsetting.
Target ended up adjusting their strategy, disguising targeted offers amongst more generic ones to make them less obvious.
So they tried to be a little more subtle about it.
But it definitely highlights how much companies are investing in understanding our habits and using that knowledge to influence our behavior.
It's like a constant battle for our attention and our wallets.
It can feel that way sometimes, yeah.
But you know, it's not just about shopping. The book also dives into the world of social movements
Oh, yeah.
and how habits play a role in shaping those massive collective actions.
That's a fascinating aspect of habits.
It really is. The power of habit uses the Montgomery bus boycott as a case study,
Oh, a classic example.
asking what made that movement so successful.
Right, because Rosa Parks wasn't the first person to refuse to give up her seat on a bus.
So why did her act spark such a powerful and enduring movement?
It's a great question. What was it about that particular moment in history that made it ripe for change?
Yeah, like, was it just the right person at the right time?
It was definitely a pivotal moment, but the power of habit suggests that it was more than just a coincidence.
Oh.
The book points to 3 key factors, all rooted in the power of habits.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, Rosa Parks had an incredibly strong network of close ties within the community.
So she was well connected.
She was deeply involved in various groups, from churches to activist organizations,
So she had a platform.
which helped spread the word about the boycott quickly and build that initial momentum.
So those strong ties were like the initial spark that ignited the movement.
Exactly. But to really fuel a movement, you need more than just a close circle.
Right, it needs to spread beyond that initial group.
That's where weak ties come in.
Weak ties.
These are those acquaintances, people you might see around town or chat with at social events, but aren't necessarily close friends with.
Okay, I get it. It's not just about who you know well, it's also about who those people know.
Exactly. Like a ripple effect.
Spreading outwards.
Those weak ties play a crucial role in exerting peer pressure and encouraging conformity,
Interesting.
which helps sustain a movement over time.
So it's like social momentum building up and carrying the movement forward.
Precisely.
But boycotts can be exhausting. What keeps people engaged for the long haul?
That's where the third factor comes in. New habits.
New habits.
Martin Luther King Jr.'s message of nonviolence and his powerful speeches inspired people to develop new routines.
Okay.
They started organizing meetings, attending rallies, and engaging in peaceful protests.
So those actions became part of their daily lives.
These actions became habitual, keeping the movement going, even when enthusiasm might have otherwise waned.
Wow, that's so insightful. It's like those new habits became the engine that kept the movement running, even when the initial burst of energy faded away.
It's a fascinating look at how habits operate on a much larger scale, shaping not just individual lives, but entire social movements.
Yeah, it really highlights how these seemingly small, repetitive actions can accumulate and ultimately lead to massive shifts in society.
But on a more individual level, the book also raises some really thought-provoking questions about the responsibility we have for our own habits.
Yes. It's one thing to talk about forming good habits, but what about those bad habits that we just can't seem to shake?
Right.
Are we just slaves to our brains?
That's a really complex issue.
Yeah.
The power of habit presents 2 contrasting cases.
Okay, let's hear them.
One is Brian Thomas, a man who tragically strangled his wife in his sleep during a sleep terror episode.
Oh, wow, that's awful.
The other is Angie Bachman, a compulsive gambler who was sued by a casino for massive debts.
So 2 very different situations.
Both claimed they were just acting habitually,
Mm.
but the outcomes were drastically different.
So in one case, the person was acquitted while the other was held accountable. I'm guessing it comes down to the question of awareness.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
In Thomas's case, he had no knowledge of his sleep disorder and therefore couldn't be held responsible for his actions.
But in Bachman's case,
Bachman, however, knew about her gambling addiction and could have taken steps to avoid the casino and manage her compulsions.
so the key takeaway here is that once we become aware of a harmful habit, we have a moral obligation to try to change it.
Exactly.
It's not enough to just say, oh, it's just my habit, I can't help it.
The power of habit emphasizes that we can't simply blame our habits for everything.
Right, we have to take responsibility.
Once we're aware of their influence, we have a responsibility to try to understand them, manage them, and ultimately change them.
It's empowering to know that we have more control over our habits than we might think. It's like shining a spotlight on those autopilot behaviors and saying, hey, I see you, and I'm not going to let you run my life anymore.
That's a great way to think about it.
This whole deep dive has been such a roller coaster of insights. We've gone from the inner workings of the brain to the psychology of marketing to the dynamics of social movements, all through the lens of habits. What stands out to you as the most surprising or impactful takeaway?
For me, it's the realization that habits are so much more than just mindless routines. They shape our lives in profound ways, influencing our thoughts, our emotions, our relationships, even our sense of self.
Yeah, they really do.
And while they can certainly lead us astray,
Oh, yeah.
they can also be incredible tools for growth and positive change.
It's both humbling and empowering to realize just how much control we have over these seemingly invisible forces that shape our lives.
It's a call to action to become more conscious and intentional about the habits we cultivate.
Well said. So as we wrap up this incredible deep dive, I want to leave our listener with one final thought to ponder. If companies can use data to predict our behavior and exploit our habits, how can we use that same knowledge to make more deliberate choices? Can we hack our own habits for good? It's almost like a challenge to reclaim our autonomy in a world that's increasingly designed to predict and manipulate our choices.
It's a powerful question. And I think the answer lies in awareness, intentionality, and a willingness to experiment.
Those are good words to live by.
It's about paying attention to our own habits, understanding the cues and rewards that drive them, and consciously choosing the routines that align with our values and our goals.
Well said. This has been an absolutely mind-blowing deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
It's been a pleasure. I always enjoy exploring the fascinating world of habits.
And a huge thank you to you, dear listener, for sending in such thought-provoking material. We love exploring these topics with you, and we can't wait to see what other fascinating deep dives you send our way. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep those habit loops spinning in the right direction.